Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today I'm going to be doing my November wrap up. Like always, this wrap up will probably be quite long. So I always have timestamps in the description if you're particularly interested in certain books. I've got Boo with his little Santa hat because I'm so excited for Christmas, which is, yeah, just exciting. I don't know why I'm feeling very festive at the moment. I feel like it's like the start of December, the Christmas tunes are starting to come on. It's just so, yeah, really enjoyable. I've got my little starry top, my Christmas tree earrings. So I'm in the festive spirit. Yes. So we'll just get started because otherwise it's gonna go on forever. So I read, how many did I read? Okay, so I read 20 books in November, plus a few extra in this wrap up because I actually read them at the end of October. I feel like I usually film my wrap ups like about 5 days before the end of the month, and then sometimes I finish like a couple of extra books so then I include them in next month's wrap up. So the first one is The Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by TJ Kingfisher, I think, and this one I wasn't expecting it, but it was so much fun. So it follows Mona, who is like I don't know if she's the palace baker or she just works as a baker. Like I think she just works as a baker in the like town, and basically the town kind of is under attack. So Mona, she has like a tiny bit of magic where she can like kind of infuse her baking with like, she can almost make it come to life. And then when the city comes under attack, and there's also a series of murders going on, and Mona's sort of being like, not framed for the murder, but everyone thinks it's her doing the murders. So then Mona kind of ends up involved with like the powerful political players in the town, and she sort of becomes like, she starts having to help fight in the war, and they make these like giant gingerbread men, and it's just so much fun. It reminded me a bit of Shrek, you know, with the like giant gingerbread man in Shrek 2, and yeah, so I just had such a great time reading it. I had like a massive grin on my face the whole time. I mean, it wasn't like particularly deep or had like a completely innovative plot. So I guess it wasn't really like a 5-star book, but I think I gave it like 4.5 because it was just so much fun. And Mona was so lovable. Like, she reminded me a lot of Lift from the Stormlight Archive, who I love. So, but not quite as like immature as Lift. She's a bit older and a bit more kind of not sensible, but like tame. But yeah, and there were some side characters as well who are just really lovable, so I just really enjoyed that one. I also read like these two the next two were NetGalley arcs, and so I read one called How to Be Ace, which was kind of like a graphic novel type memoir thing, which I thought was okay. I think I gave it like 3 stars, 3.5. I feel like it would be really good if you didn't know much about being asexual or like asexuality. I feel like it would be a nice introduction to that, but I did feel like, I don't know, I find this problem sometimes with quite a few of the ace books. They just seem quite like almost kind of superiority type things, like the kind of more sort of memoir side of things, and they also seem they tend to like pit ace against the rest of the LGBT community, which I feel like I don't like seeing that, so that always annoys me a bit. But it was a cute memoir, and like the pictures were cute, so yeah, it was kind of like a mixed bag. And I also read Remote Control by Nadie Okonkwo, who is the author of Binti, and this one was so good. I think I give it like 4 stars because it's quite short, and I feel like unless a novella is like mwah, I tend to struggle to give them 5 stars, but this one was really interesting. We're following the main character who sort of has this like touch of death, and she's kind of seen as like death's shadow almost, and everyone's quite like afraid of her, and she's quite ostracized, and so we're just kind of following her, like kind of going like around and seeing how people kind of react to her, and then we also get her sort of backstory to like how she got to where she is now, and that's very like harrowing, and I think very sort of, yeah, you kind of really see how like people's life events shape them. And also like the Minty books, these books are so kind of immersed in like culture, and you really feel like you're there, and you're like getting to know the kind of characters and like the world they're living in. I think it's sort of set in like a futuristic type version of our world, but it is slightly different. There might be some alien technology. Can't quite remember. It was a long time ago. So yeah, so that one was really interesting. And after that I read Hollypocks, which is the third book in the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend, and I love this one. I give it 5 stars. I really love this series. This is like one of my favourite middle grade series, and yeah, this was such a great installment. And also I have to show the like inside of like the naked hardcover because it's so pretty. And also I love the like, I'll find it in a sec, the light thing on the back, like burn brightly. So this book reminded me so much of the film Zootopia, which first of all I love that film, but just the plot and everything, it just followed so closely. And but that wasn't a bad thing in my mind because I really loved that. So we're following Morrigan, and she's kind of learning more about her powers and getting more kind of involved in her like little group, so Unit 919, and seeing their like group dynamic in this book was really good. I love seeing how kind of close they're growing, and also how like they all really stand up for Morrigan, and yeah, it's so sweet. And I love Hawthorne and Cadence. They're like her like 2 closest friends, and they're like 2 of my favourite characters as well. I love them. And like a big theme of the book is kind of Morrigan's like feeling home and like family, and she feels like she doesn't have them, and she sometimes gets a bit jealous of like the other characters, but then as the book goes on she's sort of realising that actually she does have that. And like her relationship with Jupiter, who's kind of like her guardian, is so precious. And then also at the same time the kind of Winimals in the society, who are like animals but they're kind of sentient, are being infected with this mysterious like pox, which they call the Hollypocks. So it's a bit like a pandemic, which I thought was really interesting with some of the parallels to our world. And also kind of the like the Winimals are seen as this is where it like, and it reminds me of Zootopia, because like the Winimals are sort of seen as like by the humans as almost like lesser, and then as they're kind of fighting for their rights, but then the humans are seeing them as animals, like just animals. So yeah, it's interesting, and I think it deals with a lot of themes, which is really good for like a middle grade. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Yeah, I just love this series. And I have Wonder Smith here. I really need to keep them like together. I need to do a bit of a bookshelf rejig, especially after Christmas, because like obviously if I get any Christmas money, I'm probably going to be spending it on books, although I really don't need to, but you know. Then after that I read Black Sun, which was our, what's it called? Oh, the Chaos Rising book club pick for November. And I have quite mixed feelings on this one, which is really sad because I really wanted to love it. But I just feel like maybe I'm not like the target audience for the book, and that's fair. And like I wouldn't kind of, there was nothing like particularly wrong with it. Like I wouldn't put people off it. Like if you're interested, then definitely read it, because it is a really like important book, and it's really good that there's some like own voices, native voices, I've said voices way too many times, fiction like available, which is really great. But I don't know, I like the world, like I nearly said what she created, no, like in a Yorkshire coming out, no, so I really like the world that she created, but I think and I found this with her other books, I just don't think Rebecca Roanhorse is the author for me, because I found this with her other book as well, but I just don't like her characters, and sort of the way they're quite like, there's a way they are, but I don't know, I just don't like it, like reading about it. And then I feel like because I don't like the characters, I then don't kind of engage with the story, and my brain just kind of drifts off. There was kind of a slightly interesting plotline about this kind of murder that's happened, and they're trying to like solve it, but I just felt like I wasn't properly like invested. And yeah, but I'm interested, so I'm filming this, like we're gonna have our discussion later, so I'll leave a link in the description to our like live show discussion, because I think there'll be some interesting like perspectives on that. And I know a lot of like Own Voices reviewers really love this book, so I would definitely encourage you to like look at it, like check it out. But yeah, it wasn't for me, unfortunately. And I really don't think Rebecca Roanhorse is like the author for me, because I like this one slightly more than Trial of Lightning. But yeah, Trail, I don't know if it's Trail or Trial, but yeah, I just didn't really love it. There wasn't really anything, I don't know. Yeah, I have a slightly mean thing, but I just feel like it wasn't the N.K. Jemisin book it thought it was. Yeah. Then next I read Library at Mountain Chart, which I gave 3.5 stars, and this book was so weird. But it was like, I feel like I quite like weird books, and it was like a weird sort of compelling. I feel like it definitely could have done with some like maybe polishing, I don't know, but it was definitely interesting, and like I found myself growing on the I found the characters growing on me a lot as the book went on, and there was some, especially like the second half, I feel like it really found its strengths, and like I don't even know how to describe it, to be honest. It's kind of, it's almost like slightly not non-linear timelines, but like different, it like jumps around timelines a bit, and like everything starts to kind of fit together towards the end, and like sometimes you'll get like a random POV and then that becomes kind of relevant later on. So it's kind of these like, there's this library which was where it's kind of outside the like normal kind of realm, and these like they're not kids, but like they were brought in as kids, and they kind of have sit in like their kind of path of study, and they're not allowed to like know each other's. So the main character, Caroline, her parents like languages, and she can speak loads and loads of different languages. And then there's also others. So there's like this character called David, who's like this psychopathic himbo. He's very strange. I'm not sure I really liked him, to be honest. And so something's kind of happened to this library, and they have this like father figure called Father, and something's happened, so they're all now stuck in like the real world, like America, and they're trying to get back. So Caroline recruits this like random dude called Steve to try and help infiltrate the library back. So but things like come to light, and it's just very weird. Like there's like talking lions and these like attacking dogs. Oh, it's just, a lot happens. If you like strange books, then this one's good. But yeah, I liked it, but like I feel like there were some things that definitely like needed working on, just in terms of like, I guess, pacing, and it took me a while to get into it as well. And the kind of, I feel like there were some themes which would touch on, which would have been really good if they'd sort of been explored a bit more, and just got a bit like, I just wanted a bit like more. So yes, so that's that one. After that, I read Library of the Dead, which was a NetGalley arc, and this one was fun. So we're following this character, and she's like, I think it's set in Edinburgh, and she can like talk to ghosts. So she sort of uses her like power to try to she's like, so she's quite poor, and she's like wanting her like money, and that's a very strong like hallmark of her character. She's only in it for herself, and she like wants her money, and like that's all she kind of cares about. But you know, it's like one of those characters who like secretly has a heart of gold. So yeah, so she's like going around, and she sort of sells like to living relatives. She'll go and speak to their like recently deceased relatives, and then like tell them the story, or like tell them what they've said. I don't know if that makes sense. So yeah, so she's like running this kind of business, but then these strange things start happening to some of the kids in the like city. It's a city. So she kind of reluctantly gets recruited to try and investigate what's going on, which it was sweet. And like watching her slowly, like she's like adamant that she doesn't care, but you know, secretly she does care. So yeah, I really loved the main character. She was so like entertaining. She was such a character. She had such like a fierce spirit, and yeah, and just watching the like her kind of navigating the like situation was fun. I feel like, I think I gave this book 3.5 stars because it did like, I think some of the writing was a little bit like clunky, but it was the author's debut book, I think. So yeah, just the writing just felt slightly like not quite there, but it was still really enjoyable. And also I feel like I just would have liked a bit, the ghosts were good, but I just kind of wanted a bit more like atmosphere. But there was a scene which was so cool, and then the main character goes and she's like dictating this recipe to these two, like this couple, and it's like the old grumpy great aunt or something who's dead in the ghost, and she's like reciting her Battenberg recipe cake, this like treasured family secret, and then this couple are like making the cake, and the main character, she's just there like chilling. And that was such like a wholesome scene. So yeah, I did enjoy this one, and it was really fun. But yeah, it wasn't like a deep and meaningful book. It was another one of those ones which is just like, it was a fun time. After that, I read Harry the Ninth, which is back here. Although I might have mentioned this in my October wrap up, I think. I finished listening to the audiobook and I loved it so much the second time. Gideon and Harry are now like some of my favourite books. The humour is just priceless and the plot is so good and the characters are just, oh, simping. But yeah, I love them. So I just really enjoyed that reread and I kind of really want to reread them again now. So yeah, so now we're on to the two most exciting books of the wrap up. So the first one is Dawn Shard, which is a novella in the Stormlight Archive series, and we're following Ryson. And I just love this novella. I think it's now my new like favourite Sanderson novella. I think I loved it even more than Edge Dancer, which is saying a lot because I have a deep and undying love for Windle. But yeah, no, I really love Dawn Shard. The plot was like impeccable, so it's just everything I love. So it's like this crew gets like recruited, I think by Navani maybe, to go on like this trip to this mysterious island where crews keep going missing. So they go and it's like, it's so atmospheric. It's like fog on the kind of ship and mysterious things keep happening on the ship, like strange things, and it was just so good. And like I've recently read The Devil in the Dark Water, which is kind of a similar thing, but I felt like this one did it so much better and it was like so mysterious and oh, it was so good. And I love Ryson as a character so much. So she's disabled, she's paraplegic, but she's kind of, I feel like Sanderson did it, I mean I can't comment obviously because I'm not, but in my opinion it was very respectful, and I think Sanderson had a lot of kind of beta readers and it did feel kind of very like, and that wasn't a main focus, but I liked how the focus was on Ryson. She'd found this like community of people who were kind of the same as her, and she was sort of in communication with them and they were kind of very like supportive, and that was really sweet to see. And also kind of on the invention side of things, because we did get a bit on like fab wheels and how they work, which is a major like bit in Rhythm of War, and like seeing that in her chair and how she got it to like fly, and it was really good. And yeah, I just love Ryson and all the other characters in the novella. I also loved Cord. Oh, so Cord is Rock's daughter, and she and Ryson have like this dynamic. I just wish they were canon. I want them to be so badly, but they have kind of almost like the kind of powerful like chosen one and their bodyguard type trope, like the princess and the bodyguard, although Ryson isn't actually a princess, but like Cord's very much her like bodyguard and like protective hen, and oh I just love it. So yeah, I love them. And then obviously we got more of Lopin, and Lopin's a little bit annoying, but I also really liked his arc and him swearing the like, I think it's the third Windrunner ideal, and his was slightly different from the others, but I really loved like it and how he learned from it. I thought that was really good. And then one of the other characters, I think Nikhil, I really enjoyed him even though he's a bit dicey, but yes. And Rushu, oh, she's like this scholar, and she's like the scholar of my like heart, because she's always just like, she's really like invested in her like things, and she's quite oblivious to like the world around her, and just like all the character interactions, and yeah, it was so good. So I gave that 5 stars obviously. And also learning more about Dawn Shards, actually, that was really interesting. Okay, and then the most exciting book, I have it here, was Rhythm of War, which is like, I think having thought about it, it's now my favourite like book in the Stormlight Archive, just because there was so much that just I loved and like meant so much to me. And I'm not going to talk about it for ages here, but I have a reading vlog, and I also have a book talk. So if you want my like in-depth thoughts, then definitely check out those 2 videos. But yeah, just the kind of, the themes are impeccable. Kaladin's arc I loved so much. So he just the direction his character goes and like what he goes through, and just the whole everything about him. I just can't think about Kaladin without like bursting into tears. I love him so much, and he went through so much in this book, and just like, oh, and the kind of I'm crying. I love Kaladin so much. Yeah, I just love him. And also, so the main kind of focus character is Navani, and we learn a lot about kind of Fabrials and like just the kind of technology and like light, so stormlight and then other types of light and just everything and like the tones of Rashar and just the world building as it expands. And I just found it all so interesting, and just the way, so like I love like women in STEM and science, and we got a lot of that in this. And then like finding out more about the listeners, I love the listeners. Vanilli is such an interesting character. I loved like finding out more about her. And then Raboniel, oh, I love her. And her dynamic with Navani, oh, impeccable. I love it. I ship them so much, even though I don't want, well, yeah, Navani and Dallin are okay, but Navani and Raboniel would just be, just their lines and, so much unintentional sapphic energy. But yeah, I love them. And yeah, Raboniel can step on me anytime she pleases. Just the whole like tower thing. We're finding out more about Irithiru and the sibling, which is they are the kind of spren of the tower. And just like learning more about that, and that the tower storyline is easily like my favourite storyline in any Stormlight book. I just everything about it. And when like characters start like getting in the woodworks and like it's like a hostile takeover, but then characters are like on our side are like keep popping out, and then the kind of like morality, like duality, like you don't know which side the characters are on, and it's really interesting. And then some of the events at the end of the book, which is so impactful for like the Cosmere as a whole and like the rest of the series. And I feel like you can kind of predict where book 5 is going, especially from the epigraphs in part 5. And I feel like book 5 is just going to be so tense. It's like a countdown almost. And yeah, just where some of the characters are at the end of this book and seeing them going into book 5 is just so exciting. And yeah, I loved all the like Cosmere tidbits. There's one reveal in this book which was just like, actually no, there were two which were like, whoa. But one of them was just so exciting to me, although slightly scary because that character's a bit of a pest. Yeah, so I feel like I could just talk for an hour easily about this. But if you want more of my thoughts, then do go and watch my other videos. But yeah, I love this. Oh, I just want to reread it. Or like reread all my favourite passages and just, yeah. Okay, that's enough of that. And the spren, I love the spren in this book. Like Pattern is an icon. Timber is so cute. Syl, I loved, like Syl is almost becoming, not more human, but she's definitely becoming the like most interesting spren. Like in terms of her kind of powers and things, which was really interesting. And like getting to know the new spren like design. And obviously I love Windle and Maya. Oh, Maya. Yeah, so I love them all. The spren are some of my favourite things about the Stormlight Archive as well. So yeah, if for some reason I haven't persuaded you to get into this series, then do it. So yeah, that's that one. I'm going to stop talking about that now. After I read them before, I was in need of some kind of wholesome content after that emotional devastation. So I read Written in the Stars, which is a kind of sapphic Christmassy rom-com, and I loved this so much. It was so cute. I gave it 4 stars because it wasn't like an all-time favourite, but I just loved how the characters kind of like played off each other and kind of grew from each other. And also it kind of had the like fake dating trope, which I love fake dating. Yeah, so one of the characters, she's kind of, her brother is like this, he runs this like famous dating app, basically like our equivalent of Tinder, but it's kind of more like, I think it's called One True Pairing, so it's like focused on kind of finding your soulmate. And Darcy, who's the main character's brother, he's very much trying to find Darcy like a kind of wife or a girlfriend. So yeah, he's very invested in like Darcy having a relationship. So he sets her up on this date with this other character called Elle, who's quite like away with the fairies type character. And they have this like disastrous first date. But then they sort of get talking somehow. I think Darcy like tells her brother a lie, and then because Darcy's brother and Elle are friends, and then Elle kind of perpetuates it. So then they have to start pretending to be in a relationship. So like Elle's family thinks she's more serious because Darcy's quite like a serious, I think she's an accountant or an actuary. I think she's an actuary. And so Elle like wants to pretend to be in this relationship so her family will take her seriously, and then Darcy wants to be in a relationship or pretend relationship so her brother will get off her back, and just so they kind of hate they don't really hate each other, but it's kind of like misunderstanding, and just watching them like grow, and it's cute. So yeah, if you like romance and you like kind of sapphics, I would highly recommend. Just and it kind of had a Christmassy feeling to it as well, which it was just great. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Then I read Love Frankie by Jacqueline Wilson. So I was really excited for this one because like I love Jacqueline Wilson as a young girl. Now I'm an ancient woman. But this one, it was fun, it was cute, but I feel like it was also maybe a bit young for me, which sometimes I don't find with middle grades. I like still really enjoy them, but I feel like maybe that's more kind of fantasy, sci-fi type middle grades. I feel like maybe contemporary middle grades are a bit young. But it was kind of cute, but I just felt like it was very, and I love the naked cover, it's so cool. And it was sweet like watching Frankie sort of learn more about herself and things. Although I feel like the relationship was slightly toxic. But I love like Frankie's dynamic with her family, and also with her best friend Sam. He was really an interesting character, and like I feel like that was quite realistic, like the kind of, if you're really close like best friends kind of growing up, and he was a really supportive friend, which was really nice. But yeah, I wasn't quite sure about the like relationship. But I mean, they were 13, so how good is a relationship really gonna be when you're 13? But I just felt like it was a tiny bit kind of young for me. But yeah, it's still a great book to like have out there for young girls especially. So yeah, and also I'm quite pleased I have it because I got it for super cheap and it's quite pretty. So yeah, even if I didn't really love it, but yeah, I guess my kids can read it one day. I will make them into Jacqueline Wilson stans. And Kathy Cassidy. Yeah. We read Archive of the Forgotten, which is the second book in the like Library of the Unwritten series, and I mean I only read this for the first time in October, but I was just in need of like a little comfort audiobook, and this series is now like my new go-to like comfort series, and I just love it. The characters, Hero, and Rami. Yeah, if you haven't read Library of the Unwritten, then please do. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because you can hear my thoughts really in my October wrap up if you're interested. So that was I love that. Yeah. Okay, and then I read Jack of Hearts by Elsie Rosen, and this was a really interesting one. It was terrifying actually. Like, so this main character Jack, and it felt almost a bit like Gossip Girl, like a queer version of Gossip Girl. So he's quite rich and he's like living in New York, and he goes to this like, I don't know if it's private school actually, but anyway, he goes to school and he has this like reputation as quite like I guess I don't really want to use the word slut, but kind of that, like he sleeps around a lot and people seem to like know a lot about his sex life. So his like best friend who like runs the school, it's not a school newspaper, but she runs like a blog, so she kind of recruits him to be like almost an agony aunt, so people from school can like write in with their kind of sex problems and then he'll answer it. Which, first of all, I thought this book had some really great like sex advice and just sort of like, yeah, safety and education, so it was really good at that, and I feel like it's a very educational book that a lot of teenagers should read. Because there were definitely some really great like tips and stuff, and also a kind of message about like being true to yourself and kind of doing what's right for you. But then, so like the conflict of the story comes because Jack starts getting these kind of threatening messages. So they're sort of like, at first they're just quite benign, like, oh, you're so cute, or I have a crush on you, or they're almost like love notes, but then they start becoming a lot more threatening, and then eventually it's almost like Jack's kind of being held hostage and like he's being made to do these things by this kind of mysterious like note leaver. It's kind of also like Pretty Little Liars where the like A starts like making them do things, so it's kind of like that, which was it was really scary, and how everything gets resolved I think was really interesting. So yeah, it's definitely a really interesting book, and I would encourage like especially teenagers to read it. And also there was a big point on like the kind of fetishization of like gay men, which I thought was really interesting and also important to highlight in kind of a book like this. So yeah, it had a lot of really good like themes and stuff. I gave that one 4 stars. That was 8. I always do that. Yeah, I didn't like it quite as much as Camp. I feel like, so Camp's this other book, and I feel like Camp was just a little bit more kind of, I don't know, I guess it's slightly more well written first of all, but also just a bit more kind of wholesome, which I like wholesome stuff. And also I really like the message of Camp, like just the whole kind of being true to yourself and like the theatre kid thing, and yeah, so I like that one slightly more, but this one was still really good. And I feel like it had some kind of quite like really important messages, so yeah. Both the angle changed, had a bit of a camera disaster. So Brambles was just a short prequel to Thorn, which I read earlier this year, and I really enjoyed that. Brambles, I feel like it didn't add much to the story. I feel like it would be a really good like introduction if you weren't sure if you wanted to read Thorn, but you just wanted a quick little like sampler, because the writing is really beautiful, but I just feel like it didn't really tell us anything we didn't already know, and it was like so short you couldn't really like get a sense of it. So yeah, so I gave that one 3.5 stars because it was well written, but it just wasn't really, I didn't feel like it added anything. So then after that I read the next two books in The Expanse. So first of all Chibola Burn, and then Nemesis Games. So I'll talk about them separately. So Chibola Burn I gave 4.25 stars, and this one was, I feel like it follows kind of the like new frontier. It felt kind of almost Wild Western. And I think it was a really interesting look at how kind of humanity would deal with kind of discovering a new planet and like colonizing a new planet, and sort of the kind of conflicts and the way like it almost becomes like it's not kind of civilization anymore, and so it's a very kind of new planet, and there's people there who, so the Belters, they're kind of there on the planet, but then the kind of corporations come and try and like take over, and then Holden's kind of there to be a peacekeeper, as is his way. I think it was a really interesting look at that side of things. And so we follow in the series, we kind of follow the main like Rocinante crew, so they're like Holden, Amos, Naomi and Alex, and then we also tend to get like new characters in each book, and some of the new characters get POVs. So I did quite like the POV characters that we got in this book, especially there was one of them whose name I can't remember, who was quite, he was interesting. And then, this book has probably my most hated villain in all of like fiction. So if you know me, you know I'm a big villain simp. Like hot villains, with tragic backstories. Maniza, Ravoniel. So I do love villains, but sometimes there's those villains which you just absolutely hate. Like I don't want to talk about the series that shall not be named, but Umbridge, you just kind of hate her. There's like no redeeming factors. So the Murtry, I hate him so much. He's just yeah, hate him more than like Amram from Stormlight Archive. Just so yeah, but also it's kind of interesting to have in a story just this like absolutely despicable person who you just hate. So yeah, I really hated him. It's interesting, like I quite like the whole storyline of like when the ships are in danger towards the end, and that was interesting. And then but so in this book, so in the series, there's a character called Avasarala who I love, and she was only in the epilogue of this book, but somehow she managed to like steal the whole book. The epilogue, it was one of my like favorite epilogues ever. It was like so kind of setting up the next book so perfectly, and it made, so I wasn't going to read Nemesis Games till like December, but it just made me want to read Nemesis Games straight away, and just I love Avasarala. She's an icon. Yeah, so then I read Nemesis Games, and this book was so great. I think I gave it like 5 stars. It was definitely, I don't like it quite as much as Caliban's War, but it was still really, really good. And just the things that happened, there were some like shocking things, and just things which kind of changed the like fate of humanity forever. But also the way, so in the series there's this thing called the protomolecule, who you kind of discover in book 1, and it's this like kind of threatening alien like substance, which is kind of almost the overarching like villain of the series. But in this book, the kind of protomolecule took a backseat, and it just really shows how like humanity can kind of is very good at creating its own conflicts and sort of causing its own problems, because this is quite like a human book. Like, it's very much the humans fighting each other and the different factions and the kind of like terrorist factions. And also I loved, so in this book we get, so the POVs, or like the only POVs are the 4 like Rossi crew members, which I loved because we've only ever had Holden so far. So I loved, and they're all kind of separated, so I loved like following each of them individually and like seeing their stories, and so yeah, they all are just so interesting. Especially, so Naomi's story was really interesting. She was kind of almost the main character of this book, and just her kind of past, and like you really felt for her, and like how it shaped who she was kind of now, and like how it was impacting events as they were happening now, and like the things she was doing, and like who she was in the past and who she is now, and just, yeah, just everything. And and like Philip, and I feel like in the book I feel like Naomi and Philip's relationship was a bit like, Naomi was like, peace out, I'm gone. But I feel like in the TV show it's 100% gonna make me cry, just from like the trailer. Yeah, so that was that. And then also Amos, I love Amos, and his POV was definitely my favourite in this book. And just setting up the next book, so Amos is gonna have this like apprentice who's this character who in previous books is like a big villain and it's caused like all these murders, but now she's like been adopted by Amos and she's gonna be his little like mechanic buddy and all. But yeah, and Amos and Avasarala have quite a few interactions in this book, and their interactions are always just impeccable. They were like my favourite thing in this book. Just they're 2 very like strong personalities, and just together, and like when he starts calling her Chrissy, and yeah, so I really enjoyed that. And also the epilogue of this one as well was very, very ominous and very scary, and I'm really kind of interested to like see what that's about. And also I'm so excited for season 5 to like see these things come to life. I feel like it's going to be done so well. The Expanse TV show is great. So if you haven't read the books but you're still kind of interested but you don't want to read the books, watch the TV show because it's so good. Yeah, and also Bobby as well. I liked seeing her more in this one. Yeah, that was another point. So yeah. Then I read The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams, and this one was a really fun book actually. It reminded me a lot of the, what's it called, A Natural History of Dragons series. Like the main character, she's called Vintage in this book, she felt quite a lot like Isabella. Like she's kind of this like almost patron of like scientific discovery, and she's quite the character. And then we also follow Tor, who's kind of, he's one of this race of called Ebolans, and they sort of, they're kind of they're quite like fae essentially. And did I just say Ebola? Ebora. Ebola. Eborans. And they're kind of like these magical beings, but something kind of happened to them a long time ago. And so now Tor's kind of living in the human world, and he's sort of been hired by Vintage as her like bodyguard. And their dynamic is so funny. And then also there's these Fell Witches, and one of them called Noon, she kind of escapes from the like Fell Witch tower, because the Fell Witches are treated quite like badly. They're all sort of locked up in this tower. So Noon escapes and then teams up with Vintage and Tor, and they're sort of going on this like little journey to try and like discover sort of what's going on, because there's quite a lot of kind of mysteries about the past, and there's these mysterious like I can't remember what they're called, sort of these like monstery things that sort of come and go in waves. So like that's what these rains are. So like the ninth rain hasn't come yet, but it's sort of on the verge, and they're sort of investigating these kind of mysterious like signs. And then also there's quite a few plot lines, like Noon is being hunted down by this like agent, and yeah, and we're also following Tor's sister, who stayed in Abora, and she's kind of in communication with this like mysterious tree god thing. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and by the end of the book I was so invested, and I'm excited to continue with the series. And it was so atmospheric. I feel like this is a really great kind of autumn winter type read. Like there's quite a lot of it takes place in like forests, and I love foresty settings, and just the kind of the magic is quite cool. It's like there's a bit of like blood magic almost, and then there's a bit of like fire magic, and yeah, it was really fun. I gave it 4 stars. Oh, 4.5 4 stars, yeah. So, and the characters just, yeah, very lovable. It felt like, yeah, like A Natural History of Dragons or those kind of books. I feel like that's kind of a category almost. Then I read a book called Cloaked in Shadow, which I got because I saw it was like free to download. But I didn't really love this one. I feel like just the writing, it just felt very like amateur. And like, having said that, like, I'm a terrible writer, so I'm sure I couldn't write a book half as good as it was. But just having read like a lot of books, I just felt like it really wasn't it. I don't know, I just didn't really care. It was like, yeah, it was okay. So I gave it 2 stars, which like sounds harsh, but like on Goodreads they're like 2 stars, it was okay. So yeah, it was okay. Like nothing, it wasn't original or anything, it was just very predictable. And yeah, I just didn't really like it. I can't really think, like, I can't even remember what it's about, even though I only read it like a week ago. Yeah. It's kind of the main character, he sort of goes to this like palace type thing, and he sort of is being trained to be like part of this elite guard, and then the prince sort of decides that he's gonna like train him specially. Yeah, and then it just sort of things are happening, and like I'm sure he's like a chosen one or something. But yeah, I feel like a better version of this is The Lightning Struck Heart by TJ Klune. That one's so good, and it's so funny, it's just like so entertaining, and the characters are so lovable in that one. But yeah, this one, it just felt very like very meh. That's all we'll say. Okay, then I read The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind, although the shit is like blurred out. And I was not expecting to like this one as much as I did. I don't really know what I was expecting, but this is so good. It was kind of like a kind of grungy LA setting, and it like very kind of almost crime like type, like spies. It reminded me a lot of you know, in Scandal there's like the B619 or 219, I can't remember exactly what it is, but like the kind of government like secret society type thing, not society, like secret agents. And so the main character, Tegan, she can like move stuff with her mind, like psychokinesis. And then these murders start happening, which have been done with like this big steel bar that's been wrapped around people's neck. So people think that it must have been Tegan because no one else could do it if they didn't have the power. So her kind of little group of people sort of end up on the run because Tegan's kind of being framed for these murders. And yeah, it's just so fun. There's like, it's all the like government like spy agent thing, and then sort of things start to come into play. And we're also following Jake, who is the actual like murderer, and you find that out very early on, so it's not really like a spoiler or anything. And he also has psychokinesis, and he's sort of doing these things because this mysterious guy called Troy has been telling him to do it. And so Jake reminded me a little bit of Seth, to be honest. It's in order for Jake to find out information about his mum, who he knows nothing about, and just the kind of reveals of how Jake is like connected to Tegan, and also how like the psychokinesis came to be. And there's just so much, it was just so good. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to like it that much, but it was so good. And I got it for 99p as well on Kindle, so I felt very proud of myself. But yeah, no, I would highly recommend that, especially if you want kind of like a fun type, like thrillery. Yeah. So I gave it 4 stars. I don't know why I didn't give it higher, but I just feel like it wasn't like, it was so good to read, but I feel like it just wasn't like a favourite. So, you know, sometimes books just have that kind of 5-star feeling, but this one didn't. But it was still like so entertaining and so good, because I can't really even think of any like flaws. Like the pacing was really good, like the characters, you got to know them really well, and also there's kind of a relationship which I was so invested in. And like the reveals were done so well, so yeah, it was really good. Then I read Fireheart Tiger, which is a new like novella, and it comes out next year, I think. So I read what's it called? An arc. I can't believe I just forgot the name for that. Yeah, and this one was really interesting. I feel like it did also suffer slightly from like novella syndrome because it was quite short. But we're following Fan, and she kind of what happened? And she sort of has this mysterious connection with a fire spirit, and also at the same time she is kind of, so she is like the daughter of a kind of, I don't know if she's exactly a queen, but she's a ruling figure, and this other kind of kingdom come, and Fan sort of ends up kind of semi-engaged, and like she gets kind of into a relationship with this other woman who's like from a different kingdom, and they kind of become like a political match, but also they kind of start like falling in love type, although it's not quite love, but they sort of get, but then there's also these mysterious happenings with this kind of fire spirit, and then the relationship becomes quite like toxic and possessive, and so it follows that, and then how this like fire power like plays into it. So it's really interesting, and it was really well written. I just feel like I wanted slightly more from the characters and like getting to know them a bit more, because I feel like we didn't get a huge amount of their kind of personalities, and especially there were some scenes which I would like more of, and sort of getting to know the relationships a bit more, because there was one kind of relationship near the end which sort of, it came a little bit out of nowhere, and I would have liked more scenes which just kind of developed that, and I feel like if it had been full length it could have had that. So yeah, I feel like novella writing is such an art, and there's so much done so well, and you just think this wouldn't work as a book, it just works perfectly as a novella, but then there's some novellas which you feel like you just want more from them. So yeah, but it was still good, so I gave it 4 stars. And then finally we have The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, and I love this one as well. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This was so like kind of nautical, and so very like piratey, and it just brought out my inner pirate. So if you don't like pirates, don't read this, because that's like all it is. It's not, I don't think they're actually technically pirates, but it's very like shippy and that kind of thing. And we're following Joran, who's like this, he's so like, I feel like at the start of the book I was like ready to hate him, but then as the book goes on you just grow to love him so much, and it's like full like custody of child by the end of it. He's just this like grumpy sailor, but like watching him slowly like grow into himself and grow into his confidence, and oh, I love him. And yeah, and like, so at the start of the book his kind of ship gets taken over by this Lucky Mace character, and she sort of becomes like, because the boat is quite like run down and the crew's all like meh. And that was a terrible description, and Joran's like in charge of the ship, but he's doing a really terrible job, and he's like drunk all the time and really incompetent. So Mies kind of takes over and starts like discipline and gets them all, whips them all into shape. Yeah, so we're kind of following that, and then like Joran and Maes have such an interesting relationship. It's like the kind of mentor-mentee type relationship, and like watching her kind of almost believe in Joran and seeing how he kind of grows from that is such like, is so good. And then I also love the kind of, or the whole like kind of nautical drama, and like the ships, and there's lots going on, and they're trying to essentially hunt down this like mysterious kind of sea dragon type figure, like the last sea dragon, because initially they're intending to like kill it before the other people can kill it and like take it for bones, because the bones of the Kishans, which like the sea dragons, they're used to make these things called bone ships, but the kind of rulers don't want the bone ships anymore, so they want to get this thing killed. So yeah, there's a whole lot going on. And then also there's this character called the Gullamain, who, oh, I love him, or them, I think it's an it. Just so funny, and they're like, remind me a lot of a Spren, or also they reminded me a lot of Jovis and Mephi from The Bone Shard's Daughter. I feel like if you like The Bone Shard's Daughter, you'll definitely really like the Bone Ships. They're quite similar, and yeah, just the dynamic between Joran and the Gullamain reminded me a lot of Jovis and Mephi, and they're just, I love the kind of like talking type, like animal type things, and they just, the way when they have like a really cute way of talking, and sort of like almost like a Spren. And yeah, the Gullamain was such an interesting character, so that was also a really enjoyable book. And it did take me a tiny bit to get into, but not really. I found myself like quite invested quite quickly. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that series. So that is all for the wrap up. So I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for sticking with me. Yeah, so if you have any comments on any of these books, please do leave them down below, because I love getting comments and replying to them. Although sometimes I'm a bit slow at replying, but please bear with me. I always try to reply to every comment. Yeah, so if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I hope you're all having a great day, and I will see you next time.